Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you my top 10 books of 2023. Now, when I tell you that this list was so hard to put together and trying to think of what books to put in my top 10 and how to rank them, I really struggled. Quite honestly, a few of these could probably be switched around just depending on like how I'm feeling, but as of the end of the year, this is my current ranking for my top 10 books of the year. And I've also got some special mentions at the end as well, just because like it was really hard to choose. I feel like I read a lot of new favorite books this year and I'm really happy with that. I've already done my worst books of 2023 video, and if you haven't already seen it, I'll link it down below. But enough chatting, let's get right into my top 10. So in the number 10 spot is Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. This is a tiny little novella. It is literally like only 100 pages long. This is a glimpse into the life of Sophia, who moves into this beautiful little community with her husband, and everything seems really perfect and going really well for her. And then one day she discovers something a little bit more sinister, and it starts to kind of spiral, and she starts to realize that her community and the things around her aren't quite right. And I won't go into too much more detail than that because, like I said, it is very short. But honestly, I had no idea what was going on in this book until like the very end. And then by the end, when I actually worked out like what was going on behind this story, I was obsessed. Like, it is so well written. It is so like intricately woven together. And in hindsight, I feel like I should have realized what was going on, but that is the beauty of hindsight. Like, I didn't expect what was happening until it was happening. In my number 9 spot is Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I personally loved this installment so much. This is the third and final book in the Knock 'Em Out trilogy, which is a small town romance trilogy, and I love this one so much. Like, yes, on one hand, it doesn't focus on the romance between the characters as much, which is, I guess, what you would expect going into a book like this. But on the other hand, all of the stuff that was going on in the background and all of the subplots and the character backgrounds and stories, I just ate it up. I won't spoil this book obviously, but this series basically follows 3 different couples and they're all interconnected, and you definitely do have to read them in order as well. But it's sort of like a romance series with like a little sprinkling of like crime or like thriller mystery, and I think it's just really fun. And this installment definitely like delves into like the crime aspect way more than the other books, but I personally loved it. I loved Lucien, I love Salome, like this is their story. I loved finally learning more about Lucien's character, and I really love Salome as a character as well. I know this didn't meet a lot of people's expectations, but it met mine, and I was so satisfied with this as a conclusion to the trilogy. Then is a book that I don't actually own yet, which is a travesty, but that is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is another installment in her sort of Hollywood historical fiction group of novels. I think it might be the last one that she's writing, but also I don't know for sure. Originally, when I first read the synopsis of this, I was really not that interested, but I was gonna read it regardless because I loved Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing so much. And this one follows Carrie Soto, who is a tennis player. She is the world champion, and then she ends up losing that title, so she comes out of tennis retirement to get that championship title back. So there's a lot of exploration of her going back into this thing that she used to be really good at, and she still is really good at, but there's the thing that everyone experiences, and that is aging. And the media, along with like her age and just like having to work so much harder as like a older athlete as well, is really explored and delved into, and I just found it so interesting. I absolutely loved it. Carrie Soto herself, I would say a lot of people probably wouldn't like her. I loved her and I just really loved how sort of abrasive and like forthright she was in the way that she spoke to the media and a lot of people around her in general. I personally really loved that in her character. The other themes surrounding this, like just with family and even like the romantic aspect of this book as well, was just so beautiful. And it's one of my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid novels. I love this one so much, and I'm so glad I read it, and I really need to get the physical copy. In the number 7 spot is a book that I feel like I read so long ago, but it was this year, which is wild to me, and that is Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. And this one, oh my god, this was one of the most unique books I've ever read. It is about a woman named Nikki who is pulled into the Punjabi community in England, I'm pretty sure, and she takes a teaching job at her local temple. And little does she know is that like the advertisement for the teaching job was sort of like a lie. So she took this job, got this job, without realizing that it was actually a writing class for whoever wanted to join. It sort of evolves into this class where the women just get together, or a bunch of the widows specifically get together, and they do write as well, but they share stories of like romance that they've written, and it's so cool. And then like it's wild, there's like a murder mystery in here as well, which I was not expecting, and it was so entertaining. And there was a lot going on in this book, but it was so well put together, so well written, and so entertaining. It explores womanhood and sexuality and community. At the end of the day, like it really brings these women together, and I just loved reading about it so much. It was really good. And like just reading all of the individual like short stories that the old women write in here as well, they're good, and like I really liked reading them as well. So I highly recommend this. I do not see anyone talk about this. I think I've seen one person on BookTube talk about this, and I haven't really seen it outside of that person. So I highly recommend this if you haven't picked this one up, or if you haven't heard of it. It is so under the radar and so good. In 6th place is a recent read for me, and some of you might be able to guess, but that is Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Oh my god. If you haven't watched my reading vlog for this, I suggest you go watch it. I go into way more detail there, but this made me cry, this made me laugh, this made me feel so many things that I wasn't expecting, and I truly think that this is Ali Hazelwood's best work yet. Now this is YA, it's not like her STEM romances where they are adult and have much steamier and like sexier scenes. This is all like fade to black, like closed door sort of romance, but the relationship building in here is so well done, and the family dynamic, oh my god, I loved it. That was probably one of my favorite things about this book in general. Like I said before, this one is YA, but I would class it as more like upper YA. It's not like young. It's more so like the characters are 18 and 20, so take that with what you will. This one is about Mallory, who thinks that she is completely done with chess. She ends up finding herself playing chess again, and kind of accidentally finds herself in the professional world of chess, where, you know, she can make money and help provide for her family and whatnot. And I just loved it so much. I just loved reading about chess as well, which is never a sentence I thought I would say ever, but I was like googling like chess tournaments and stuff, and like just like chess talk, and oh my god, it was so cool to read about. And Ali Hazelwood does have a knack for making something that you might not necessarily know about or understand and making it sound really, really cool. It was so much fun, and I loved the sister dynamic in here in particular. Oh my god, it made me cry. So I really enjoyed this. I think it is Ali Hazelwood's best work. Now in 5th place, this one was really hard to place just because I loved it so much, but at the end of the day, there are books that I think are better quality and I would say are higher up on my favorites list than this one. But the next few books are all pretty solid in their place, if I'm being honest, but this one was really hard to rank, and that is Fourth Wing in 5th place, not 4th place. This book took the book community by storm back when it came out. This was also so huge that I had people from my workplace like approaching me and being like, hey, do you have Fourth Wing? Can I borrow it? My friends were talking about it. So this was a big fantasy release of this year. It has dragons. I love the characters in here so much. I love Violet, I love Xaden so much. I love the dragons. Oh my god, the dragons is like the main thing that made me adore this book so much. As soon as we got to the dragon part, like where we started to get to know the dragons more, oh my god, I was sold. I was instantly sold. Like, I'm obsessed. And I do have a reading vlog up for this one as well, but I won't go into too much detail with this because I feel like everybody has heard about this. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was so much fun, so entertaining, and I really liked the representation of chronic illness with Violet as well. I thought it was really well done, and I liked how it was explored. I think it's worth the hype, personally. Coming in at 4th place, now this one is a bit weird because all of these books are 5 stars for me except for this one. Now why is it in 4th place despite being the only book that's not 5 stars in this list? I don't know, it just feels right to me. So the book in 4th place is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I love this book so much. This would have been a 5-star read easily had it just had a little bit more time with the main relationship and the main couple. But apart from that, it was like perfect. Like the writing was gorgeous, the plot was gorgeous, the character development, the magic aspect to this. Oh my god, it was so beautifully done. Again, this was a book that I wasn't expecting to like that much. I don't know why. There was just something about the synopsis that didn't really gel with me, but I was pleasantly surprised. This one is about Clementine, who has had her life turned upside down. She moves into her aunt's apartment, who recently passed away, and then one day she comes home to find a random man sitting in her apartment, and the apartment is a little bit timey-wimey. It goes back and forth in the future or past by 7 years, and we don't really know like why or how or anything like that, and it sort of explores more about that, and then they get to know each other. There's some subplots going on with her work and a restaurant owner as well, because she does work for a publishing company that publishes like cookbooks and whatnot, and so there's a little subplot with that as well as the magic house aspect. But it was just so beautiful. I adored this. I genuinely think about this story multiple times a week. Like, I love this book so much, and again, like the only reason it's not 5 stars but it still made it in this list is just because, like, honestly I feel like it could have been a little bit longer and it was almost perfect. Coming in at 3rd place is another horror, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Oh my god, this book was beautiful. I, again, like The 7-Year Slip, I think about this book all the time to this day. It impacted me, I think, so much, and more than I realized. It is about a woman whose wife is a marine biologist, and she goes on a deep sea exploration trip, and she goes missing for months and months, and she's presumed dead. But then one day she does end up coming back, and she is the same, but there's just something off about her. There's something really different. It is so well written, and it flows so seamlessly as well, from the kind of short flashbacks that we get of the events that happened inside the deep sea submarine to the events that are happening in the present between her and her wife. It explores themes of grief and sapphic love, and all of those moments were just so tender and heart-wrenching as well. This isn't a horror book in the way that I feel like a lot of people would imagine a horror book to be. It is very much a cross between a horror story and a love story at its core, and like I said, it does really explore grief, and oh my god, it's so lyric. I'm gonna cry thinking about it. I've done this before, but like, I can't even explain to you how beautiful and stunning this book was. Yeah, I loved it so much. It was so good. The book in my number 2 spot is a book that, again, I feel like I read so long ago, just because I think about it all the time, and I loved it so much, and it stuck with me for all of these months. And I read it at the very beginning of the year, or like in February or something, and that is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And I can't oh my god, I don't know what to say, because with this book, it is a historical fiction. I can see this definitely not being for a lot of people, and I can understand the criticisms that some people might have about this, but I personally loved everything that people criticize this book for. It now has a TV show adaptation as well, which is pretty good as well. I do recommend. And it is about a woman named Elizabeth Zott, who is a chemist in the 1960s, and she struggles and goes through a lot of hardship. A lot of this is very traumatic because of being a woman in that time period in general. She ends up kind of falling into a job where she is the host of a cooking show, and she does her own little spin on it regarding chemistry and science, and that's sort of like the gimmick that she does with it. I thought this was like weird and unrealistic in all the best ways, but then there were still aspects that were so realistic and true to this time period, and it just made it really heart-wrenching in some aspects, but also sort of like silly goofy in others. I will give a trigger warning though, that literally I think in the first like 20 or 30 pages there is a graphic rape scene, so just keep that in mind, because I feel like I don't see a lot of people talk about it, and it really took me off guard. But despite that, I still really love the story overall. I love Elizabeth Zott as a character. It does have some goofy aspects to it, like I mentioned before, like for example, like her dog, she teaches her dog English, and her dog literally understands human language. There are parts like that that make it very silly, but I personally really enjoyed those parts, and it was kind of interspersed with lots of serious and heart-wrenching moments as well. And I just thought it was so well written. It was beautifully done, and I adored it. Like, I really adored it. And now for my number 1 book of the year. It was really close between Lessons in Chemistry and this one, but I had to go with this one. It is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is the first book in the Crowns of Nyaxia duology. This was so entertaining to read, and Carissa Broadbent's writing is just exquisite. It is so beautiful and so easy to read as well at the same time though. And this one follows Araya, who is a human, and she is raised by the Vampire King. She ends up taking place in a competition called the Kajari, where she, or whoever wins it, gets to win a wish from their goddess. In this competition, the vampires all take part, and they kind of just have to survive and take place in these trials and whatnot as well. And that's all well and good for the vampires to try and survive anyway, but she is a human, so she has to survive these trials and everything, as well as just like not die in the middle of the night or like be eaten by a vampire. And it was just so much fun. Like, I ate this up completely. It was kind of like Hunger Gamesy, but like adult smutty version with vampires, if that makes any sense. I really loved the main character Araya. I really loved the love interest Rain. Oh my god, Rain I think is one of my favorite like book guys ever. I am obsessed with him, and I love him. I love the way that Carissa Broadbent writes her romances as well. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I feel like this got a bit of hype and then it sort of died down a bit. So if you haven't already read this, I think it's been traditionally published now. So I recommend you pick it up because it is a really fun fantasy romance, and it's got vampires, and honestly I just love vampires so much. So they were my top 10 books that I read in 2023. Now for some little honorable mentions. First up, we have Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mehra. This one is, I guess you'd call it a fantasy romance. I would honestly mostly call this like a romance, but in like a fantasy world. It's more like cozy fantasy, if anything. And it's really like silly and goofy and funny. There is literally a frog character in here. He literally holds up a sign with a word on it and joins in on the conversation, and it's so funny. I really enjoyed this. I am really excited for the next one. This isn't a standalone. I thought it was a standalone, but it's not, but I loved it so much. Sorry, my battery died. So the next book that I really want to mention is By a Thread by Lucy Score. This was the first Lucy Score book that I read, and I loved it so much. For those of you who like to know the tropes of romance books, it is a grumpy sunshine romance, a grumpy boss specifically, and a billionaire romance.